Okay, let's talk about one of the biggest paradoxes in ancient philosophy. When we think of Stoicism today, we usually just picture this highly rational, practical set of ethics. It's the ultimate modern toolkit for resilience, right? But here's the catch. If you actually crack open the original texts of the Stoic masters, you're going to find them absolutely drenched in reverence for Zeus, for providence, and this divine logos. So it begs the question, does Stoicism actually require a belief in God? Can you be an atheist and still be a true Stoic? Well, today we're going to explore exactly what the Stoics believed about God. We'll lay out all the different historical and modern views so you can weigh the evidence and make up your own mind about how to ground your personal ethical journey. All right, let's dive into this. On our agenda today, first, the Stoic God. Second, God or atoms. Third, the traditionalist argument. Fourth, the modern secular approach. And finally, choosing your Stoic path.
Section 1. The Stoic God, exploring the divine in ancient texts.
So, what exactly is the Stoic God? Because it's an undeniable historical fact that the early Greek founders of Stoicism leaned heavily on a divine framework. But what did they actually mean when they threw around names like Zeus or Providence? If you're currently picturing the traditional Greek myth, a bearded guy sitting up on Mount Olympus hurling lightning bolts, you need to just completely erase that image from your mind. The Stoic God was entirely different from those conventional religious views. They called it the Logos. The Logos is basically the active principle, or the rational order that moves through all of creation. See, the Stoics were materialists and pantheists. To them, God wasn't some supernatural entity existing outside of the universe. God was the universe. God is literally identical to nature itself. So when they used the word Zeus, they were really just using it metaphorically to describe this living, breathing, incredibly rational order of the cosmos. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how deep that reverence went. Take a look at this quote from Cleanthes. He was the second head of the Stoic school, from his really famous hymn to Zeus. He writes, "O God, without you nothing comes to be on earth. You guide the universal logos of reason which moves through all creation." Cleanthes didn't look at the universe as just a bunch of dead matter. He saw it as a deeply rational, living, divine entity. For those early Stoics, aligning your life with nature meant actively aligning your life with this divine, rational will. Moving on to Section 2, God or Atoms, the ancient skepticism. Now, here is where the story gets really fascinating, because the ancient Stoic school wasn't some rigid, dogmatic religion. It was a philosophy, and it actually had a striking tolerance for skepticism. Take the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, for example. In his private journal, Meditations, he repeatedly tests his own Stoic worldview against the rival Epicurean theory, which was this idea that existence is just a totally random collision of atoms. He writes, "Recall once again this alternative. If not a wise providence, then a mere jumble of atoms. Either would be insanity. All thoughts of blame are out of place." He's literally, intentionally challenging himself with two completely opposing versions of reality. Notice the dichotomy Aurelius is setting up here. On one side, you have providence. The universe is guided by this rational, divine goal. On the other side, atoms. The universe is just propelled by blind, purposeless chance. And the absolute genius of Aurelius's argument is that he realizes his ethical response has to remain exactly the same, regardless of which system is true. Think about it. If God rules, well, you accept your fate. If blind chance rules, there is still absolutely no point in getting angry or assigning blame. The core Stoic ethical doctrines work perfectly on both sides of that cosmic coin. Epictetus actually takes this pragmatic approach even further. He argues what nature is and how she administers the universe and whether she really exists or not. These are questions about which there is no need to go on to bother ourselves. Basically, Epictetus is saying that getting totally bogged down in the theoretical physics of how the universe works is, frankly, a distraction. It distracts from the actual, practical, everyday goal of just living a virtuous and resilient life.
Which brings us to Section 3, the traditionalist argument, Mark Vernon's defense of the Logos. Having established that ancient context, let's fast forward to the 21st century, because today, there is a really vigorous debate happening among practitioners. First, let's look at the traditionalist stance. For writers like Mark Vernon, theology is the absolute foundational bedrock of the philosophy. It's not just some optional add-on. So the crucial point here is that trying to practice Stoicism without a belief in the divine logos is literally like trying to breathe in an atmosphere without air. Vernon argues that if you strip away that metaphysical big picture, you're stripping Stoicism of its power, and you turn it into nothing more than just a mechanical, unfounded personality adjustment.
And to validate this claim, traditionalists point right back to the ancients, specifically Epictetus, who said, "You are a fragment of God. You have within you a part of him. You are bearing God about with you."
For the traditionalists, Stoicism has to be a commitment of faith to a changed perception of life. It's about intuiting the presence of God in nature and having trust that whatever happens to you is ultimately shaped by this beneficent, magnificent pattern. It gives you a really profound why to back up the how.
Section 4. The Modern Secular Approach. Tim LeBon's Pragmatic Framework. Now let's play referee for a second and impartially pivot to the other side of the debate, the modern secularist counterargument championed by psychotherapist Tim LeBon. So while Vernon sees Stoicism as the spiritual commitment to a divine imperative, LeBon views it fundamentally as cognitive behavioral training in virtue. For LeBon, you absolutely do not need to believe the universe has some grand plan to realize that your anger is caused by your own judgments. You can change those value judgments, you can become a better person, and you can flourish entirely without an ounce of religious faith. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the empirical data. This table shows results from the SABS, that's the Stoic Attitudes and Behavior Scale, which is used during Stoic Week. It actually measures which Stoic elements correlate most strongly with human flourishing. Notice those top two rows. Belief in the cosmos as a living thing, or having a grand plan, scores a correlation hovering around 0.14 or 0.16. But look at the bottom three rows. The practical, secular exercises, things like paying attention to your judgments or recognizing that your thoughts are just impressions, score more than double that, jumping up into the 0.30s. So, the data strongly suggests that the cognitive practices are the true active ingredients for well-being.
Modern Stoicism essentially takes those findings and isolates these highly effective secular tools. We're talking about Stoic mindfulness, paying close attention to your actions, disputation of thoughts, realizing an upsetting thought is really just an impression, affinity with others, seeing yourself as part of a larger human whole, and premeditation, mentally rehearsing future challenges. Not a single one of these four incredibly powerful psychological tools requires you to believe that the universe is governed by Zeus. They simply work because, well, they align perfectly with human psychology.
All right, final part, Section 5, Choosing Your Stoic Path, the synthesis of the debate. Look, my goal in this explainer isn't to tell you which side is right. It's to lay out the facts clearly so you can make an informed decision for yourself. Because both paths have incredibly deep roots. The theist path grounds your ethics in the universal logos, giving you this profound sense of cosmic connection, meaning, and a divine imperative, exactly like Cleanthes and Epictetus felt. On the flip side, the secular path grounds your ethics in rational training and psychological pragmatism. It leans heavily on the skepticism of Marcus Aurelius, trusting that virtue is its own reward, completely regardless of whether the universe was created by design or by blind chance. Ultimately, both approaches demand serious discipline, virtue, and a steadfast commitment to focusing only on what you can control. But the foundation you choose to build that upon, that is entirely up to you. So I'll leave you with this final provocative question to reflect on today. Providence or chance? Which reality will you choose to guide your own Stoic journey? Thanks for exploring this fascinating topic with me. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you in the next explainer.